Now, keep in mind that some of my guests have been approached by Homeland Security or FBI saying, why are you going over the Clay Douglas show? My message to those guys, if they're listening this morning, is go get a cup of coffee. Maybe you'll learn something. We both took the same model, to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I don't recall there being an expiration date on that. He is the free American, Clay Douglas. Catch the Free America weekdays at 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern. Every time I think about the damage that's been done, the anger will inside me till I'm almost overcome. I want to down the moon now, gotta end up with that. For the podcast and more details, visit www.freeamericans.com or catch the podcast by phone by calling 832-998-8631.
All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Free American. I'm your host. I am Clay Douglas. My guest today is Colonel Swensen from Georgia, an activist that is, I believe, doing the really right thing. He is taking the situation with the lawyers who are controlling our Congress and our courts, and he's taking it right into City Council, City Hall. Hello, Carl. How are you?
I'm pretty hunky-dory today, Clayton. How about yourself?
Well, I'm doing well, but I got to tell you, I've been waking up with nightmares that are almost daymares about lawyers. 2 days in a row, I've woke up with the problems with the lawyers in a local community here, running through my head over and over and over again. A young lady here has pretty much had her life ruined by the poor performance of what's supposed to be a lawyer, a public defender in this county, and seems to be no recourse, nowhere she can turn, nothing she can do about this situation, which is now approaching 10 years old. Too late to appeal. She couldn't appeal. She didn't have the money, and this is over a photograph. Over a photograph. And I finally came to the conclusion that I had to write the story and inform the community what has happened to her, or I couldn't live with myself. But this is just one small incident. Happens to be somebody I know, and it occurs to me that this could be happening to your children, to your friends, to anybody, anywhere in this country, by a justice system that really is an injustice system.
I don't know how else you can put it, but that's exactly right. There's controlling the children that they can drum up. But Clayton, I've got to give you a little background on how this is able to happen. First off, you've got to understand that all of these so-called laws that are written that were used to imprison, intimidate, and annihilate that family structure of the woman who allegedly took a picture is by design, and it starts with legislation. Let me tell you how that works, Clayton. Let's start at the state level first.
Okay.
And I'll use Georgia for an example because I know that one quite well. We have legislators that are elected into office every 2 years. Some are elected every 4 years, the senators. They go into office thinking that they're going to affect change and do up everything that we elected them to do. And there's not a chance in hell that they ever get an opportunity to do so, because what happens is groups of these legislators get together and come up with an idea that they think may be beneficial. And sometimes, more often than not, the idea for this legislation is planted by a corporation. There has been Dan Orrick here, is famous for having exposed that in the Georgia legislature. And what happens is, whatever idea, no matter how convoluted, no matter how unlawful or unreasonable it might be, well, guess what? The legislators don't write the law. They turn this idea over to the legislative council. And it is the legislative council that writes the law. And guess who this legislative council is? It is a group of 12 lawyers, attorneys. They, admittedly, I've got them on record, admittedly write all of the legislation for the state of Georgia. And that's not bad enough. No. You see, they've got to have control all the way down to the local level. So what happens is a group was formed many years ago, I don't know, a decade, maybe 2 ago, called the Association County Commissioners of Georgia. This is a corporation, a nonprofit corporation, that has the charter to assist the counties in crafting their own legislation. So what they do is they have a team of attorneys that advise all of the county attorneys across the state on how to write resolutions and ordinances so that they're all in uniform compliance with the state laws that these very same attorneys write. Now, the attorneys that are on the ACCG just happen to be the same ones that are part of the legislative council. So you can see we've got a I don't know what you want to call it. It's darn sure not a representative republic. And for all I know, they may all be interrelated, so we could have some sort of incestuous oligarchy going on. I don't know. But what I do know is that we've got 12 men. Man, I don't know that they're all men, excuse me. 12 attorneys. 12 dregs of society that are writing all of our law. And then they advise the counties on how to write their law. And further, they advise on how to incorporate the counties, incorporate the cities, incorporate every aspect of what you call governance. If you've got a water authority, guess what? It is a private, non-profit corporation. If you've got a police department, guess what? A private, non-profit corporation. Sheriff's department, private, non-profit corporation. How about your court system? Every county court system is a private, non-profit corporation. anybody that is elected into office never makes it to that office. They are immediately swept up into the corporate structure of corporate America. And yes, Clayton, it does start at the very top. And all of this is made possible by those hot-licking attorneys that have their hands around the neck of America. And they're not going to let go until they have destroyed this country and stolen every measure of wealth that can be taken and returned us to the slave state for the crown that we have always been. So that's pretty much where we stand right now. And when you talk about the attorneys, or excuse me, the public defenders that work for the court system, by the way, they do not work for the clients. They do not work for the defendants. They work for the court system. And all of the laws within that court system structure are meant to be held up and made to be adhered to by the public defenders, by the prosecutors, and by these administrators that people call judges. We have no judges, by the way. They are all administrators. And there was a recent Supreme Court ruling that calls all of these administrators illegal. Well, what does it matter? Because they control the whole shooting match. And the family services part of this is one of the biggest money-making machines that you have ever seen in your life. We have been documenting time and time again, Clayton, how they will take families, rip them apart, and for what? For grant money, for award money.
This woman that I'm dealing with, that I'm writing this story about, that she got paroled out after doing some time for the failure of her lawyers. She is still paying every week. She has to go to a meeting and pays every week into the system. So you're absolutely right on that.
They get money from the federal government. They get money from the victims. They get money from every conceivable angle from the state, sometimes from the counties, sometimes from the federal agencies through the state, through the counties, sometimes from the state through the counties. But however you slice it, this money that is used to destroy families is initiated by the feds. It is their thumb on America. It is their control. It is why everybody is afraid, and nobody is willing to stand up and fight this Leviathan.
You know, there's and pardon me if this goes aside a little bit, but I think it's an integral part of this. Jim Stone did an article. I featured it on my show yesterday, and the day before yesterday, about boycotts. Now, you know, I talk about Israel a lot, and they're afraid Israel is really coming down on the Palestinians, because the Palestinians are talking about a boycott. I believe that's called BND. They're talking about boycotting Israel and some of Israel's goods and things like that. But Israel is, and our government here, with the control of our government, is boycotting Americans exactly as they did Germany back before World War II, when you couldn't sell a piece of German silver in New York City because of a boycott. And Stone, who was a member of the Jewish community for a while, said basically they're shutting down all of our manufacturing, even our food supply, if you don't buy the GMO foods, they will boycott the producers and put them out of business. If you're a manufacturer and they have a competing company that they're supporting, they will boycott your production, your food, your supply, and you won't be able to do anything until everything is under this one world government we call the New World Order for years. Is that, I think that's part of what you're talking about.
Let me ask you something, Clayton. How many lawyers or attorneys were euthanized in the concentration camps?
None that I know of.
Funny thing about that.
None that I know of. And there's another thing, you know, we've person after person have documented that this there wasn't a Holocaust, it was a hoax. That and the Germans didn't do this. Somebody and you got pictures of bodies, but how do you know if those bodies are Germans or Jews? There were millions of Germans that were starved to death and died of disease. And you can't tell. It's hard to tell a dead body, what the ethnicity of a dead body, huh?
Well, all that's true, but the more important aspect of this is who wrote the history and why. Who wrote the history and why? Were there pictures of dead bodies? Yes, there were. Were there concentration camps that they found? Why, yes, there were. Did people die in mass? Why, yes, they did. But is that the reason why we went to war? Why, no, it isn't. We went to war strictly because it was a profitable venture on the part of the bankers globally. They shifted the entire diametrics of the globe with that world war. They put us into the last and final stage of perpetual death. They took away every aspect of the remnants of what we call government. Everything changed. Everything went over to the UN, where it remains to this day. And now the only thing that's left is to play vulture and pick the bones of America. That's what they're doing right now. Sure, people are working. Sure, people are building. Sure, people are driving around. Yeah, they are. But guess what? Freedom is gone. Gone, gone, gone. Gone with the wind. And along with freedom, liberty. Gone with the wind. We are under tyrannical control of a communist government that has as its army of soldiers legions of bureaucrats called attorneys. That is our enemy. And I'll go you one step further. There was a lot written about what happened in Salem, Massachusetts during the witch trials, or during the witch hunts there. I'm going to venture a educated guess that it wasn't witches at all that were being burned to the stake. I'll venture a guess that it was lawyers. Because they speak another language. They take American words, twist and turn them to suit them any way they feel. That has been going on for time immemorial. And if you don't believe it, I ask anybody within earshot to pick up Black's Law Edition, number 6, and read the 4th and final paragraph in that edition. It says it all, and it gives the full explanation as to how those deities in black robes that sit in these courtrooms are able to cast their spells upon the poor, unsuspecting people. There is your enemy, my friends, and that enemy is controlled by and works through both the Crown and the Vatican. Now, Clayton, you know that there are 3 city-states.
That's
you
right.
know that one of them is Washington, one of them is the Vatican, and one of them is the Crown, or the
That's
city
right.
of London. What you don't know is that there's a 4th entity involved in this. And that 4th entity is the creation of the Vatican. It is called the UN. The UN took control of America back in 1946 and has been in control ever since. They are in every state of the Union. Their home, their city-state, is New York City. And people are going to have to start getting used to the idea that there's going to be a 4th star on that Washington, D.C. flag before long if we allow it. And that 4th star is going to be the UN.
That's right.
So,
Which was, by the way, UN was created by communists anyway. And World War II, in my opinion, we had at least 3 communist countries ganged up against the German people.
Yeah, and guess what? America was one of them.
Yes.
We turned communist officially in 1933. FDR gave every living, breathing man and woman over to the Vatican, over to the City of London. He gave every bit of property. You name it. If you own it, you don't own it. It is owned by the Crown, the military-industrial complex, and more importantly, the Vatican. So,
that's right. And every American is the property. We were pledged as collateral for a debt that was basically rigged. And at the same time, he took all of the gold out of the hands of the American people and transferred it into the bankers' hands.
that's correct. And anytime this country has tried to recover and has amassed any kind of gold, well, guess what? They figure a way to spirit it out. Now, we can talk conspiracy theories, but I prefer not to. But what is not debatable is that Fort Knox does not have in its coffers the gold that it's supposed to have. That hasn't been there ever since 33 at least. So, you see, folks, everything is smoke and mirrors. Everything is a play. Just like The Matrix. Just like, oh, I don't know. What would you say? I want to say Alice in Wonderland, but that's not quite true. And although all of these major cartoons have some basis in fact, scarily so. We never knew it. We just thought they were good movies, you know. But the fact is, they were warning us. And they did warn us. And we didn't pay attention. So, we haven't been paying attention for a long time because we've been fat and happy. And too busy playing in our own little worlds. So,
It's always a
as long
mess.
as that's the case,
Go ahead. I'm
As
sorry.
long as that's the case, yeah, as long as that's the case, Clayton, nothing is ever going to change. And I don't know what other people will do, but I can tell you that what I'm going to do is continue to expose the fraud. I do so at my county commission meetings, and I'm going to be now refocusing my efforts on making videos about this. I've been away from that for quite some time.
Yeah,
So,
give me your site again, the video site.
I've got riseupforamerica.com. That's riseupforamerica.com, all spelled out, and also yln.tv. That stands for Your Live Network.tv, as in television. Now, I haven't done any updates on those for a while because I've been so busy doing research. And that research is what you're hearing about now. What myself and a fellow researcher have been finding is totally baffling. And I say that because every time we start getting close to a very, let's call it, important part of the puzzle, the whole scheme of how it is reported changes right in front of our eyes. And it's happening again right now. Yesterday, one of our major tools was taken down and then brought back up after it was retooled because it tied into Dun & Bradstreet. They took all the references to Dun & Bradstreet off of it. We have other tools, so it's not that it's the only thing that we use. But I'm telling you that they pay attention to what people are finding out, and they don't want people to find out who the main corporations are that are playing here. We know that nationally, if we can call it that, it is the United States of America Incorporated, all capital letters. That one was a new corporation formed in April of 2008. It has already undergone many name changes, and what the attorneys do is they find and create DBAs for these corporations. And in many cases that we have found so far, those DBAs tie in closely with the Archdiocese of New York. So the Vatican is spearheading this particular method of cat and mouse, trying to hide the main corporations. They make them go inactive. They create DBAs. The DBAs create more DBAs. And all of it keeps getting changed time and time again. So you don't know who the actual corporation today is. Some of them are operating under the same charter that they had back in 1912. The U.S., for example. 1912 charter. Still operation, still active. But guess what? It's had DBAs done to it. And the DBAs are all referencing the Vatican Church and the Archdiocese in Chicago this time, because that's where that one was done. Every state has a corporation name. Every state has a corporation CEO. Guess who that corporation CEO is? Yeah, you're right. Typically, it's your governor. This is all written, again, by the attorneys. They play these terrible, terrible games upon America. They're laughing all the way to the bank, Clayton.
Well, but as you said that, Carl, I could see all of the television, all the clear channels, all of the newspapers, all of them DBAs of the same whole Rothschild banking system, and the governors, the mayors, all working for the same people.
Yes, they are. And I found another little interesting tidbit, and that is that, again, looking at just one area, that is the Henry County Board of Commissioners, okay? Let me tell you what happens with these bad boys. They have a corporation that's a perpetual corporation as long as the registered agent keeps paying the dues. And this corporation immediately takes the Board of Commissioners as they are elected and puts them as the Board of Directors for a company called the Henry County Governmental Finance Corporation. They have as their charter the ability to do business, to rent property, to buy property, sell property, to take gifts, to make money, to lease back to the county any and all properties that they deem necessary and proper to operate. It is a non-profit corporation, but it would appear to most reasonable people now that the non-profits are where they are making their most illicit money, because they can pay themselves any amount they want just to keep the books at zero at the end of the year. So when I called them out on that, and then I called the county attorney out on that, well, guess what? They went stone cold silent. They are not talking about this. And when the Atlanta Journal-Constitution came to visit me to get the story, I showed them the information that made their jaw drop. And at the end of a 2-hour interview with one Tammy Joyner with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, well, guess what? She understood exactly what I was saying. And I said, there's no way that this is going to see the light of day, is there? And she said, no, it won't. The editors won't let us. And you know why the editors won't let us?
Who won't let them?
The editors of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution
Okay.
won't let them, because the Atlanta Journal-Constitution just happens to be controlled and owned in large part by a company called Cox Enterprises. Cox Newspaper Enterprises. They not only own every outlet for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution in the state of Georgia, they also own most of the local newspapers as well. So none of this, which is, to say controversial, would be a gross miscarriage of justice. They'll never let this out because the people cannot be trusted with this information. That's where we're at, my friend.
Yes, sir.
Today is July 16th. We're kicking off day 2 of Jade Helm. And everything that you see happening is happening by virtue of the fact that consultations have been done with the military, with the local governments, with the state governments, with all so-called governments, to make sure that the transition into the fascist state that we are in right now is seamless. You, Clayton, live in a region. We now are all regionalized. Those regional corporations are the center point of our new government, of our new slave masters, of our new controllers. In Georgia, it's called, well, in my region, it's called the Atlanta Regional Commission, which is one of several regions here in the state of Georgia. But if you or your audience decide to get frisky and try and find out the truth, you may want to do a little research in your state and just pull up, put your state name in, and type in regions. You will find the regions that your state has been carved up into. Go ahead. Pull it up right now. I dare you.
The attacks, and I put this down under our show, the attacks have begun on conspiracy theorists, and they've singled out Alex Jones this time. Just to give you a quick sample of that, have you heard about Jade Helm 15? If the answer is no, then you don't get your news from the paranoid purveyors of conspiracy theories at websites such as InfoWars and WorldNet Daily. They gin up concerned about non-issues in order to drive traffic to their websites to thereby sell advertising products and services. Jade Helm is the name of a major military exercise scheduled to run between the 15th of July and 15th of September. Exercise coordinated by the United States Special Operations Command and involves special forces, units of the Army, and other service branches. An unclassified PowerPoint lays out the exercise in some details. It involves about 1,200 military personnel, primary Army, Green Beret, and infantry, but also some Navy SEALs and Air Force special operators. Yeah, so what they're trying to do is downplay Jade Helm and make people like me, Alex Jones, into conspiracy theorists.
Well, what else can they do? It's the same old game, and they just change the players. But when the truth starts to come out, it has to be the people that bring it out have to be marginalized, demonized, criticized, ostracized, and made to be absolute raving lunatics in the eyes of the audience that they so frequently and consistently program. You, if you watch television, are being programmed. You, if you listen to broadcast news, are being programmed. You, if you read the major newspapers, are being programmed on a daily basis. You're being fed crisis after crisis. You're being fed problem after problem, all for one purpose. That is to keep your eye off of the ball. And the ball is the game that is being played in our courts. The court system runs America.
Well, we had presidents like Eisenhower warning about the military-industrial complex. Today, and one of the things that I was talking about and intend to write about is the prison complex, the prison industry. We've got private prisons here and state prisons. They're making money. They're putting the inmates to work for IBM or Hewlett Packard, and nobody seems to think a thing about it. Isn't that true?
It is terribly true, because what people don't understand is that this country was based in commerce. It got its very first life breath from commerce, from the king. This whole thing, all of these colonies were corporations. They were companies. And that hasn't changed. To this day, it has not changed. Everything's been in commerce. But there's more to it. There's more to it. There is something called a trust. Every person is born with a trust. That trust is called the Cesta K Trust. And all of these prisoners, all of the people involved in anything having to do with the court, have their trust funds being used to pay for the attorneys, the courts, the DAs, the prosecutors, the bailiffs, the clerks of court, and the whole corporate system. We can turn that around. We can become the beneficiaries, as we are supposed to have become, of that trust. But to do so, we need to remove ourselves from their system. If you are a U.S. citizen, you have given your trust account, the Sophisticated Trust, in your name. You have given it over to the state, or the county, or the federal government, because that is what they tap into.
Besides, and this is either related to, or maybe it has nothing to do with the fact that the bankers are printing their very own money so they can buy up anything of value. And if they get through with this boycott that I've talked about, they'll be able to buy companies and products for pennies on the dollar, if they even need to use a dollar. All they got to do is make a digital entry on their computer systems now, right?
They're not even bothering with that anymore. Money is passé. There is no money. There's only debt. Everything that you have in your pocket is a debt instrument. Unless, and of course, unless you are carrying around gold and silver. In which case, being a U.S. citizen, you are an enemy of the state. You are an adversary. You are an enemy combatant. That is another thing that happened in 1933. Thank you very much, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, for making U.S. citizens out of everybody.
You're talking about the guy that referred to the Russian Tsar who murdered 60 million people. Franklin Delano Roosevelt referred to him as Uncle Joe.
Yeah, that's the guy.
Yep.
And everybody thought he was just the greatest president in the world. Boy, he brought us out of recession and right into war, didn't he?
Well, let's see, the victors write the history, don't they? The communists won, the Jews won, and they managed to demonize and kill millions and millions of both Russians and Germans and Americans. I really believe they may have killed more Americans in America here through their pharmaceutical and medical industry than they killed in Russia, the old-fashioned way.
Well, and they're continuing to do it. I'm going to be getting close to, let's see, an Air Force base here in Georgia, and all I have to do is look out and look up into the sky to see how they are handling us, the slaves, the great unwashed. They're spraying on us on a daily basis using, what do they call it now? Atmospheric aerosols, I think is the term they like to use, because they don't want to use chemical spraying or chemtrails. That has a negative connotation to it, so we can't have that. Let's call it something nice and pleasant. Let's call it aerosol spraying, high altitude. They've been doing it to us forever.
I made my film, Carl, I made my film Chemtrails, the video, almost 20 years ago.
Yeah. Well, were you aware of the one experiment that they have on file now on record that is incontrovertible, where they used Americans as guinea pigs? They went out to San Francisco, and you know how that beautiful fog rolls in every day? Now they laced that fog with some bacteria. They just wanted to paint the Golden Gate Bridge with that and see how it would affect people. Well, it only killed one, and it only, it only made like 10 people just short of deathly ill. I guess they consider that a good experiment, you know. But they're using us as the lab rats to test all kinds of chemicals and means of delivering that chemical. You know it, I know it, and the people that we make aware of it in this quote-unquote government know it. And they should be arrested on sight. They should be frog-marched to the very same FEMA camps and have done to them what they have in store for you.
Have you heard? And I can't document it. I mean, I can't confirm it because I haven't seen it with my own eyes. But they've actually bought guillotines into this country.
Well, we can sit here and debate that till the cows come home, Clayton, but I don't know anything about that. All I know is that's just another means of scaring the piss out of the people. That's what they like to do. It's all a game.
Be afraid. Be very, very afraid. And they don't... that's exactly what they want. That's what the whole Cold War was about. The Russians are coming. The Russians are coming. The Russians were never our enemy. They killed as many of them as they have us.
Remember what Churchill said so famously? The only thing to fear is fear itself.
Yes.
Gee, what did Churchill know that we don't?
A lot, and you know, the truth is, and we've been finding out and getting there, is that Hitler didn't want war at all. He said the British were the Germans' brothers. They didn't want war with England, and he spared a lot of their troops. He could have ended this whole war early, but he let the English troops go back home.
Yeah. There's much of the history that we don't know, Clayton, because it was never written. It was only written by the so-called victors. And they are the same victors that manipulated the First World War, as you know.
Yes.
They're the same victors that spirited all of the top-level brass from the Nazi regime out of the country, many of them into this country. One of the main players there was none other than Prescott Bush. Very, very important in bringing these people over here. Why? Because they were just getting started with the New World Order then. They were just getting started controlling the people. They were just getting started with their experiments on a global scale. How many people can they wipe out? How can they control the population? How can they control the number of people on this planet at any given time for their benefit? All being done under so-called legal protection. It all comes back to the attorneys. It always does.
Well, I've said that the offices for the Bar Association are probably across the hall from the Rothschild banks in the city of London. And
for those who have not decided to go down these particular rabbit holes, let me tell you that what the attorneys have done through a corporation called Delaware has been absolute and total control. That whole state is the breeding ground for the corporate crimes that are being committed all over this country. The major seats of power are D.C., New York, Florida, and California. Texas fits into the mix as well. But the first ones I mentioned are the main players, and they have done such a wonderful job of confusing people that nobody can follow where these corporations actually, truly exist today. I know that the main corporation for the United States of America Incorporated, was rechartered in 2008, just prior to the Obama-nation coming into power. It was done by, yeah, you got it, George W. Bush.
Who's supposed to be dying, we can only hope, and I think he's been hospitalized. Now, while these people are trying to say that Jade Helm isn't, no, it's just a conspiracy theory, despite receiving multiple applications from leading U.S. outlets such as the Washington Post to monitor the war games, the Pentagon has rebuffed all requests, saying it would be impractical to follow commandos on fast-moving operations in real-life urban terrain, and could also expose officers who will later perform classified missions around the world. The Army Special Operations Command has said that it may let several reporters follow a segment of an exercise if it's convenient at some point during the drills. We're dedicated to communicating with the public while balancing that against the application of operations and security and other factors, said a statement from Lastonia. Doesn't sound like they want they want the public to know anything.
Of course not. They cannot afford to have an informed public. To have a functioning government, that is the first necessity. You must have an informed public. And that's why when the bankers bought America from the Vatican in the late 1800s and completed the transition in the early 1900s, around 1911, that's why the first thing they had to do was to purchase the news outlets from across the country so that they could control what the people knew. And then when Hollywood started having its effect and reaching many people, they had to take over Hollywood. They did. And it was really a simple matter. They just buy them. They buy loyalty.
Now, you know, there's something that's interesting here. Governor Abbott of Texas has demanded that the gold be returned to Texas. We're talking about $1 billion worth of gold bullion that's supposed to be returned to Texas. And, you know, whether we'll see it or not is we got probably about the same chance as we got to see the gold in Fort Knox. I don't know that it's there. But with this happening, and Russia has announced, again, it's hard to confirm any of this, but Russia has stationed ships and submarines off of the Texas coast in the Gulf of Mexico. We talked about that yesterday. It's this might be, and Russia's threatened to do that since we got involved with the whole restoration of the the country of Khazaria. But Texans are, I've been with the militia groups. They are training and they are forming. Former Marine Pete Lantieri has formed the Counter Jade Helm. That's a volunteer group that will monitor the soldiers as they operate in Texas. And of course, I'm right here in Big Spring, where they started this whole crap by talking to the city council and getting invited to Big Spring. But so far, I haven't really seen anything other than the Walmart closing 40 miles away with walls going up around it. I can't confirm the tunnels under Walmart's, but they certainly could be there. And
well, after all, they need to do something like that because of, it's the plumbing. It's all about the plumbing. You know that. And the plumbing's underground. Come on. Of course they've got to dig.
Yep. Now, what they're saying here, if a team member sees two Humvees full of soldiers driving through town, they're going to follow them, said Eric Johnson, one of the organizers, told the Houston Chronicle early this month, and they're going to radio back their ultimate location. We're going to be watching what they do in public, said Len Terry. Obviously, on a military base, they can do whatever they want, but if they're going to train in public, we have a right as American citizens to watch what they're doing. And this is exactly what I've told people. These soldiers, a lot of them are speaking out, saying we're not going to take the guns from Americans. These soldiers are your children. They're our brothers. They're part of our family. They're Americans. And we're not talking about taking up arms against our children. I've told people, if you see soldiers operating, walk up to them, shake their hand, and say, what's going on, guys?
Well, that's all fine and well, but I have a sinking feeling that what they're going to get in return is some platitude being uttered by a Russian. And here's why I say that. It was back in, let's see, that would have been 2012, I think it was. I was down in Miami Beach to be exact. And I went to one of my favorite haunts down there, a place called Monty's, right on the water, real close to Government Cut. And for as long as I can remember, every time I went there, there was usually Latin servers, Latin bartenders, Latin people taking care of the entire bar. But for the first time in my 63 years of being on this planet, it changed. All of a sudden, everybody that was having to do with service there was Russian. And I started asking some of them, wow, this is different. When did this change take place? And one of the women there, a very physically fit woman, not unappealing to the eye, but very stout, said to me, oh yes, we have a whole community that we live in up in Sunny Isles. So I talked to a few more people about it, and they confirmed the same thing. There's a contingent in Sunny Isles of about 10,000. I've heard rumors about there being a contingent in West Palm of similar size. And I've talked personally to people in Harry Riley's group that have been paying attention to what's going on in Tampa, and they confirm that the Ybor City area of Tampa has been taken over by Russians there as well. So, we have a Russian invasion that nobody knew about. What are the chances that these military-looking men and women, short hair, physically fit, ready for just about any emergency, what are the chances that they would be the ones that would be going door to door getting people's guns and not American soldiers?
That's possible.
I think those chances
That's
are
possible, and if the story that I did yesterday about the ships and submarines being stationed offshore off of Texas in both the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic. And some of these are nuclear submarines that they're talking about using against communist-controlled centers in America. I'm not sure who the good guys are here, Carl.
How can we know who the good guys are when we have the likes of Lindsey Graham, who admitted, and it's on record, it's in court records now, that Obama had ordered nukes to be set off in Charleston Harbor. And only because of a few patriotic officers were those nukes taken out to sea and detonated 600 miles off the coast. That's not conjecture. There's proof from a senator, for God's sakes. There's proof in the form of seismic graphs that show that on the day in question, there was seismic activity, substantial, in the Atlantic off the coast of South Carolina. I'm sorry, but how much more in your face does it need to get before the people say, okay, I think it's time we get a circle of this militia group and surround the foreign entity known as DC and starve the beast? I believe that is the only thing that will work. I believe it is the only thing that we have left to do. I believe that is what we are looking at. An enemy, a terrorist enemy that has taken over Washington, D.C. with Muslim roots, hell-bent on the destruction of what we have always come to know as America.
Well,
so
I feel like I'm right in the middle of it all here in Texas, because the first omen was a secret but actually unclassified, showing that Texas as a hostile territory during the operation alongside Utah. So it's not unusual for various areas in war games to be designated or friendly and hostile territories, explained the Pentagon. But to no avail. The conspiracy theory had lifted off. In the past months, audiences have been treated to suspicion that closed Walmart stores will be repurposed as underground bases connected by tunnel. Fridges previously used for carrying ice cream will be deployed to transport dead bodies, and Texans will either be forced to endure martial law or even be bundled into concentration camps. We don't know. Again, they're putting out so much disinformation, and that's to cloud the real truth. Listen, I've been to these Walmart stores. They are closed down. They are surrounded. They got fences all the way around them. You can't see into the Walmart store in Midland, Texas.
You know, Clayton, again, these things are happening right under our noses, and nobody seems to give a rat's rear end about it, because it doesn't right now, today, affect their lives in a way that they think is necessary to do something about. That's the part that will probably never cease to amaze me. What a miraculously wonderful job of control these people have exerted upon this nation. It is incredible. So, if you realize, as I now do, that every major player from every state government, down to your local county commissions, do not occupy the seats they were elected to occupy, that they are, in fact, corporate executives. Once you realize that, you're going to be taking a completely different look at your beloved Governor Perry. Because Governor Perry is no such thing at all. He's no governor.
It's a Governor Abbott now. Perry's working on president. Perry's out of there. We've got Governor Abbott now.
Okay, sorry. Can't keep up with the players without scorecards, you know?
Yeah, change the name, but the players are still the same.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The first time, and this is always something that has stuck with me, the first time someone gets elected to public office, do you know what happens to that person the first time they are elected to public office? Let me tell you what happens. They are sent to indoctrination centers where they are told what they are to do, how they are to act, who to answer to, and who to get advice from. For those that are a little more intelligent than others, it doesn't take long for them to figure out who are the ones that are going to grease their palms. Wait, every time we see someone go into Congress, that's capital C, capital O, capital N, every time we see a new player go up there and plead poverty, can you think of a reason why that person, who is a full-time Congress critter, can leave office with substantially more money than they made while being in office? How is that possible?
I think it's corruption.
They're all wealthy. They're all wealthy. It's not hard to figure out how they do it. That's been established.
The question is, though, and you know, I think I've had the answers maybe 10 years ago or more with my whole Liberty Village theory. I said if we grow our own food and we produce our own energy from everything God gave us, and you know, I'm out here in West Texas right now. As I was driving a few miles east, I saw row after row of windmills, these giant windmills, thousands of them. And so it's not unreasonable to think that you could put a windmill in your backyard. We did it for hundreds of years across this country.
Do you realize that there are unintended consequences for everything that we are discussing here?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. We could have solar power everywhere. Yeah, we could. What about the unintended consequences? Because in order to get that solar power, you have to cover a large surface area with these reflective mirrors, which are the solar panels. Now, the unintended consequences would be the reflected heat back up into the atmosphere. With the windmills have proven to be highly, highly inefficient. Very costly to operate, very costly to maintain, and very costly to nature. Because it does not allow for the free flow of air. Everything has a price. And every time somebody decides he's going to play with nature, it always winds up with disastrous results. I just left an area that is a prime example. South Florida. South Florida has something called the Everglades.
Yep.
The Everglades is a sea of grass. It's a body of very shallow water extending from a point north of Lake Okeechobee going all the way down to Florida Bay and the Keys. that fresh water was kind of problematic to those who wanted to make money off of the state of Florida by virtue of selling land. Because there was only so much developable real estate in South Florida. And as soon as they started heading west, they started heading into the sea of grass. Well, kind of hard to put a home in some place that's always going to be up for water. So guess what? So they did. Then they thought, well, that's not going to be a good idea, because if we do that, then that's going to kill off an entire ecosystem that this whole area is dependent upon for both vegetation, fish life, and fresh water. So, excuse me, they came up with a plan that will allow for some water to move, not very much, and a dike system, a levee system, where they could contain it. So the western reaches of Florida, from a point north of, I want to say, West Palm Beach, all the way down into the Florida Keys, has a levee around it. But therein, they control the water, and a series of canals where they can drain it off real quick should we get any big rainstorms. Because after all, you can't have these expensive pieces of property, being underwater. They just can't do that. Nobody wins there. So they built these two roads going from east coast to west coast, one called Alligator Alley, and the old one called the Tamiami Trail. Again, one big levee. Again, stopping the flow of water into the lower portions of the Everglades and Biscayne Bay. Disastrous implications, disastrous results happened because of the rapid die-off of native fish species to the Florida Keys, to the Florida Bay, to the livelihood of fishermen. It just destroyed an entire ecosystem. What do we get? Oops, my bad. Let's fix it. So they started building, on the Tamiami Trail, they started building a raised road going across there. I was on that road yesterday. It lasted for about, 5 miles out of about 80 that should be wide open. But I look off into the distance, about, a couple hundred yards paralleling this road, and there remains the freaking levee all the way across the state.
Remains what? What was it that remained?
A levee.
A levee, okay.
Blocking water flow. So, again, it's all about the money. And the Corps of Engineers who engineered this whole disaster continues to re-engineer at our expense, thinking that maybe this will work, maybe that will work. And every time they tell the people that they're going to do something to restore the flow of water into the sea of grass, they do something else that is just the opposite of what they say they're going to do. It is incredible. And now, my good friend, I'm greeted. I haven't been down there for, it's been about 5 years, 6 years, maybe 5 or 6 years since I was down there last. Now what they're doing is they're fencing off the roads so that on long stretches of roads that go through the Everglades, you can't stop the car and get off and go look at the natural anything, because there's a big chain link fence with barbed wire on it all the way from Homestead, Florida down to the Upper Keys. All of the shoreline is accounted for and under state control. It's all state-owned, and we're not welcome there at all. not public-owned, state-owned. So they've already done their regionalization, and we just don't know it. They've already given us the New World Order, we just didn't know it. And now it's just a matter of bringing the fences in on us. They're corralling us, much the way you would use nets to corral a big school. That's what's happening right now. The noose is being tightened around America.
Let's go back to this energy thing.
People.
Let me go back to this energy thing. Somehow, I think there has to be answers to this, and they don't want, maybe the answer is simply magnetic generators. You know, you can take a magnet, set it outside a squirrel cage, put a ball or a round object in it, and it will, being pulled, it'll turn that wheel from now on. But they don't, to build a magnetic generator now violates a National Security Act. They call it a perpetual motion machine, and it's outlawed. What I'm saying is, doesn't there have to be some kind of answers here? Isn't there a happy medium that doesn't include slavery?
No. No, there is no happy medium. I wish I could say that there was, but there isn't. Everything is predicated on our demise, basically. They can't have people being free, people being off the grid. They cannot have people thinking and acting for themselves, because that takes them out of the control factor. The only thing that they've got to control us right now with is money. If you can be self-sufficient, you are beyond their control, and that is not permissible under any way, shape, or form. So every advancement in energy is going to be an advancement only in the method of securing money from you, from me, to pay for their designs on the world. Electricity is one of the main utilities. Water is another utility. Those things are methods of control. And if you don't think they are, look at what happened to Napa Valley. Look at what is happening to California as a whole. They cannot have too much fertile ground. They cannot have a land of plenty. They must create the shortages, because shortages create prices, create commerce, create debt instruments that we call money. It's all part of the grand and glorious scheme to continue to enslave us. And if you don't believe you're being enslaved, ask yourself this. How much more money do you have in your pocket at the end of the year, this year, than you had last, or 5 years ago, or 10 years ago? More or less at the end of the year? I'll bet you, dollars to donuts, that the vast majority of people out there, Clayton, are going to say less. And the best bumper sticker saying that I've seen so far that sums it all up is the one that says, "Are we broken up yet?"
Well, you're absolutely right on that, and that's exactly how they came after me economically. They tried to destroy my source of income. They tried to demonize me. They tried to discourage people from listening to this show or making donations. So when I used to make several thousand a month off of my radio show and my magazines, now I don't make anything. And I'm blocked in libraries, for God's sakes. You can't go into a library and get the Free American. You can't go into the Veterans Hospital and get the freeamerican.com. They'll tell you it's a porno site. Carl, they have tried to destroy and succeeded pretty well in destroying all of my income. Why? Because we do this radio show every day, 2 hours a day for the last 20 years. Trying to make a difference.
They're going to have
What's that?
They're going to have a hard time eliminating that now, aren't they?
They've had a pretty hard time, and yet, I went into the VA. I finally got my VA card, and I went in there and gave.
How many years did that take, Clayton?
50 years. Oh, we lost your records. Oh, you weren't in long enough. Oh, I'm sorry, I was, and I finally walked into the Veterans Hospital here and laid my DD-214 on their desk, and they couldn't deny it anymore. So, okay. Well, all right. Here's your VA book. Here's your little guidebook here. Well, I sure could have used that the medical help 10 years ago when you kept me in a hospital for 3 months, trying to destroy my income, trying to destroy my shows.
Well, my friends, the only thing we can do is devise and improvise different methods of attacking the Leviathan. That's our lot in line. We've got to fight for freedom. It's never, ever been free.
Well, I've told people, Carl, can you tell me a time in history? Give me a date. Give me a date when it was easy to be free. There has never been one. The money changers that Jesus ran out of the temple are still with us. They just changed the name of the temple.
Yeah. And all of that is and has been documented. And it's there for people to see, those who want to see. Those who want to hear can hear. But those who choose to stay in the matrix, to take that blue pill and just stay within the confines of the slave master, that's going to be their lot in life. I do not choose that, Clayton, and I know you don't either. I will not stand still until I have exposed the criminals for who and what they are. You have personal knowledge now of what the system is doing to families. I have personal knowledge of that as well. And what we have seen is a concerted effort on the part of the communist-inspired DC foreign government to shift money out of whatever coffers you may think they come from, because God only knows, I don't know where they come from, other than they are just printed out of thin air. Those monies are used to support groups like the psychiatric group across the country, psychiatrists across the country, psychologists across the country, family therapists, probation officers, child support, you name it, anything having to do with the families. They are being shoveled money, hand over fist, to keep the numbers up, to keep their numbers up so that they could continue to receive more grants. And it's not about doing anything right or wrong. It's about keeping up with the program, making sure that the families are completely run asunder.
Well, a friend of mine went to a psychiatrist the other day, And all they did, all the psychiatrists did, was try to feed her medicine. Have you taken this? Have you taken this one? Have you taken this one? She says, I don't need any medicine. I know what this stuff does. And she read up on what it did. It was kind of like the Super Bowl commercial when they spend the first half of it telling you how this medicine could kill you, and the other half trying to get you to go to your doctor to get the medicine. This, I think the pharmaceutical companies are probably the worst, or as bad as the lawyers. And the lawyers are working for them. The money, I've seen the markups. I've seen the markups on the pharmaceutical industry. 2,000% markups. And oh, that's all right. Don't worry about it. Social Security will pay for it.
Yeah, and by the way, we need to charge that much because, you know, the research is what costs everything. Research costs a whole bunch of money. Yeah, research does. But let me see if I get this right. If they take all of the research that is being done and put it into one big pool, a pool of cost, so to speak, and then in the other pool, the amount of money that is being generated by the products that they have been able to create, which by and large don't do a damn thing for the people, I'll bet you the second pool is going to be one hell of a lot larger. And why? Ask yourself why, folks. Why are they able to get so much money over and above the cost of doing the research, of doing all of the things supposedly necessary to bring you these life-enhancing products? The answer, my friends, is that money does not remain on shore. It goes across the pond. It goes to the Cayman Islands. It goes to the favorite holding companies that they have across America, of which there are legions of holding companies. All of these nonprofits have, within their group structure, holding companies. Now, how is that supposed to work? The Vatican has its own holding companies. Hell, the Elks Lodge is able to sell bonds, for God's sakes. All of this is a purposeful design to separate the wealth of America from Americans and to neatly bundle it up, package it up, and then ship it offshore for safekeeping for the criminals that have created this nightmare. The attorneys. Yes, the attorneys. It is
so
now.
Let me ask you here, how, other than doing what we're doing right now, and it's hard to do what we're doing right now because of the lack of support. People don't call. My phone number's up on every website. You can call my phone numbers, and if I don't answer that phone, we'll try the other one. I'll answer that one. And nobody calls. Nobody calls during the day. Nobody goes there to make a donation. FreeAmerican.com. It's people want their freedom, but they're not willing to fight for it. They're not willing to support the ones that are willing to fight for it. They're not. They don't even give moral support. What's wrong with these people? I mean, come on. Who are we doing this for? Do you think I'm just fine here? They're not going to come after me. They know who I am. I've walked into the FBI office in Albuquerque, dropped a bundle of magazine down on the desk of the agent I saw, And I said, I just brought a magazine. I got one for every agent here in the building. I just wanted you to know who I am. And the guy kind of looked at me and kind of smirked. Oh, we know who you are, Clay. But I was able to walk out, too. So, obviously, I'm not a criminal.
Clay, the FBI is its own corporation. The CIA is a megalithic corporation. Any alphabet agency that you can think of is its own corporation, answering to its own board of directors. Those board of directors are, in many cases, appointed. They're rarely elected. They're appointed to do the bidding of one of the other major corporations. I don't care which one it is. They can work together. They do. But what they don't do is work for us. When they spend time trying to figure out how they can demonize and make available to the legal profession the words necessary to incarcerate freedom-loving Americans, they no longer work for us. They work for themselves. When I say they, I'll use the FBI in particular. When they put in their manuals that people who are constitutionalists are now terrorists, when they start labeling people as such, guess what they're doing? They're giving the marching orders to the legal eagles out there to use one of the hundreds upon thousands of laws that have been written to arrest Americans. If the law hasn't been written for it, they'll write it. No problem. There are legions of attorneys out there, and that's all they do is write new law.
I was up in South Dakota when I went up to Sturgis up there one time, and I met an old rancher up there, and he was kind of bitching about it. He said, you know, they just added another dozen or two laws here. We didn't need it all. We didn't need it all. Why are they doing this? And they do that in every state. If the people that we elected were doing what they should be removing these laws, so we don't have laws against victimless crimes, so we aren't putting people and our own citizens into prisons across this country so they can work for the banksters.
The money that is changing hands at the court level is absolutely incredibly immense. These people are making so much money doing this that why would they stop? What incentive do they have to stop doing it? None. Hey, they're getting fat and happy off of it.
There was just a story, and this was actually in a local paper. There was just a story out about just one little section of Texas where the courts were just they wrote more tickets in one little town than they had inhabitants. They were making so much money off of their ticketing system. It was just incredible, and they were starting to, it even reached the mainstream. You know, why are they doing this? Why? And one justice of the peace, one judge quit because of it.
I can't imagine it being that bad where one of those spellcasters would willingly give up his black robe. I just can't imagine it. But you know, Clayton, what I would love to see as a movement across the country is for people to get together, go to their judges' chambers, grab up all of those black robes, take them home, bleach them white, and then take them back. Bleach them white.
I think that was the last century.
I'm telling you, it doesn't take much to just disrupt the apple cart that they are on right now. And that would be one such disruption that they would not be able to handle. Because what they have, legalese, is a craft. It is a satanic craft. It allows for the destruction of not only families, but it allows for pedophilia to run rampant in the upper reaches of the elite world, and it allows for that to continue to this day. And if you don't believe that, look up what has gone on at the Boys Ranch. Look at what has gone on at Kids for Cash in Pennsylvania. For that matter, look at your own state's Child Protective Services, as Nancy Schaefer did here in Georgia. And when she went to expose it, well, that was the wrong thing to do for Nancy, because she's no longer with us. It's happening everywhere, folks. Kids are being used for sex. Foster care is one such vehicle for that to happen. It was documented, and it happened here. What's happening in your state?
We will be addressing that to some extent in this series of my next article about the injustice in our justice system here. And it's this woman I'll be writing about. She can't even get a job, and she's on probation, so if she ain't working, she is in danger of going back to jail. And she didn't molest any children. She didn't do anything. Somebody took a picture. There was some film in her camera of a woman's children in the bathtub. No pornography. No pornography in the home at all. Oh, whoa, wait, excuse me. They found a Playboy magazine on a bookshelf somewhere.
Oh, well, there you go. That's enough to imprison him for life.
That's what they've done. They put her in prison basically for life. She's on probation. But, well, the probation officer comes by once a week. She's got to be home when the probation officer's there. And she tried to get a job, but you can't get a job if you're a sex offender. What's the offense? Owning a camera with that was accessible to children, so the children took pictures of themselves.
Well, let's see. How did that particular picture make it into the hands of these criminals?
The woman found the camera. It was her camera. She took it into HEB and got the film developed. So the one of her fellow workers in HEB turned it into the police.
Look. Of course. Because there was money to be made. The probation officer is part of the corporate government, which is the court system for that particular county, and they can increase the amount of money that they get in grants and whatnot. If this woman should possibly move out of that county, because then it goes across jurisdictions, and everybody gets a piece of the pie. So no matter where she goes, the farther she goes, the happier she's going to make more people.
That's right.
That's the system.
So she's locked in there. She can't go anywhere. She doesn't have a automobile, but she's got to drive 40 miles once a week to meet with a meeting where they sit around and bullshit and charge her $25 or so.
And in the meantime, Clayton, there's another group out there that is sucking in federal tax dollars to do research and surveys on how mothers in this situation wind up committing suicide. And that would be a program that is never ending. Because what do they have left when their children are taken away from them and they are demonized and held up as enemies to their own family, to their own neighbors, to their old friends?
That's right. And in this particular case, I guess the woman who was the mother of the children was not even charged. Was not even she didn't even get involved in this. They just turned her back on her and demonized a totally innocent woman who never done nothing. No sex involved. No sex with children. Like the priests around the country that have been, like the politicians who probably, the ADL probably has whole file cabinets full of pictures of politicians with children that they just hold over their head.
Okay, tell me this, riddle me this. Why is Coppertone still allowed to engage in business when they had the picture on a child's butt on billboards all across the country?
Because it's owned by the corporations?
Funny thing about that, if you are a member of the club, you are immune to prosecution. Gee, isn't that special? That's the society we live in, folks.
Yeah, that's George. I can hear George Carlin calling to you from the grave. It's a big club, and you ain't in it.
That's correct. He had it right, always had it right. And there's been many others out there that have been fighting this battle for 20 years or more, Clayton. They saw it before we ever saw it. And they're just plain sick and tired of America's apathetic approach to these ungodly, unholy minions of disaster called attorneys. Because you and I both know, if tomorrow every one of them was rounded up and kept in one of those detention facilities, life would start to return to some sort of normal, now wouldn't it?
I believe so. I don't believe we, the people, can certainly handle robbers, thieves, murderers. We've done it before throughout our society. 100 years ago, we could take care of a murderer. We could take care of a horse thief. We could handle it.
Don't you think it's just rather insane that they would use as an argument there, well, how many innocent people will be killed if you take it out of the realm of the judiciary? Oh my goodness, we may have one child that will be lost because of all of this. We may have one man or woman who may be falsely accused For the love of God, folks, how many people do we have in our prisons now that should not be there and are only there because these attorneys wrote laws to put them there, and they have no business being in prison? None. Victimless crimes.
Victimless crimes. You know, I wrote a novel. I called it science fiction then, 45 years ago, about this country when they abolished the laws against victimless crimes, and we really, at least in 46 states. And I thought it was science fiction at the time. Today it doesn't look much like science fiction, but it looks like an answer. If we put out the lawyers that you talk of are the ones that are making money off of the victimless crimes. If I get caught with a little bit of pot or a little part of a powder in my pocket, I haven't hurt anyone else. And this woman I've talked about, somebody had left some pills in her car with the children that were not being molested. And so she's got double charges against her. Oh, not only do we have child pornography, we got pills here. We got a controlled substance. And
God help her if in that mix she was a armed person legally carrying a weapon, because then they get to charge her with yet another very serious crime, having a firearm in the commission of a felony. Oh my goodness, what a beautiful trifecta that would be. Well, they couldn't ask for anything better than that. Child pornography, drugs, and a weapon. I mean, how heinous a crime can you possibly get? Can you imagine the salivating that must be going on with judges and prosecutors to see such a case?
I can certainly see them do that. Yes, I can. And, I just can't accept, Carl, that we can't do anything. Somehow we have to do something. Like I said, I've woken up 2 nights in a row. I woke up out of a sound sleep. It was 4 o'clock this morning when I woke up, thinking of how I was going to structure this article, how I was going to frame this story, because it has to be told. It's like all of a sudden it dawned on me in the middle of the night that I may be the only hope this woman has for a normal life.
She will never have a normal life. She's been scarred. They have completely ruined that woman.
Yes,
Trust
she
me on
has.
that one. They have ruined that woman. She will never have a normal life. I hate it for her. You hate it for her. But let's get real. They have done their damage. And even if she is exonerated at some point down the future, guess who gets to go free based on all of that criminality?
The public defenders that she had.
Yep. As a matter of fact, by the time that happens, I would venture a guess that that very same public defender will now be a, judge. They are routinely given extra credit for doing such dastardly deeds, for working with these, the court system. They're routinely rewarded for that with judgeships. They can be completely incompetent, like as many judges are. The only prerequisite is that they are satanically evil and don't give a rat's behind about anybody other than themselves or the court system. And if I sound a little down on attorneys, you would be right. I am very much down on attorneys. And I don't care how many you say you know that are really good and nice people. Yeah, they're good and nice people. Look what they've done to the country. Look seriously at what they've done to the country. Then come back and use that argument. Whenever you're ready. It doesn't fly. They're the dregs of society. They are the criminals. And we are just the pawns in their little games.
You know, it's what really dawned on me while I'm thinking of this, while I was thinking of how to structure the story, is this could be anybody's story. Somebody could have thrown the camera into her car and then stepped back and pointed their finger at her, and she would have had to go through this and go to court to defend herself if somebody had just thrown the camera in her car.
That is correct. Everybody can put anybody in a position that they would never recover from should they want to do that. The people I am driving next to right now, I don't know. But I could literally claim some dastardly deed by that person, and there's a willing prosecutor out there to turn that into a criminal offense and put that person behind bars, whether or not they did a damn thing.
Well, you know, that's the reason. That's the reason I wrote my novels about a world without victimless crimes, because this is what the police do over and over again. They take a little bit of drug that they got in their pocket and they put it in somebody else's pocket and take them to jail. How do you defend?
Sounds like a hell of a deal, doesn't it?
Well, considering how much money the county and the attorneys make off of prosecuting these people, I'd say it's a hell of a deal. I'd say it's a hell of a racket. Almost as good as our banking racket. How about if we loan you this money that we call a Federal Reserve note and charge you interest on it, but hey, you'll be able to buy that car you've always wanted.
Well, you know, there's only two ways to get around this now, Clayton. In my book, one is to call them out, put one agency against the other because of the criminality involved, which is what I'm attempting to do right now. And the other one is to make sure that everybody that you know goes to school to be a lawyer, so that everybody's a lawyer.
A fate worse than death, as far as I can tell. All right, Carl Swensen, I've got your links up on my side underneath the show. I appreciate you being on my show again. I appreciate the work that you're doing. God bless you. You have a great day here down in sunny southern Florida.
Well, I'm in Georgia now, but thanks a bunch, Clayton. And again, everybody contribute to the work of Clayton. And if you have any left over when you get to my site, get to the PayPal side on that one and donate to me too, because there's not very many people out there fighting for you, but there's a hell of a lot fighting against you. Goodbye, Clayton.
All right, sir. Thank you. Bye-bye now.
You bet. You betcha.
Alright, let me see what I've got here. I think I had one more thing to do here. Oh yeah, I know let's see what Jon Stewart, Jewish comedian, has to say about Jade Helm. You won't get all of this.
I got to be honest with you. Last week, with everything that was going on in the world, and in Baltimore in particular, was a tough one. A lot of chaos, confusion. So I was happy to get a good weekend, and coming in today, I was feeling fresh start. Yeah, I felt good.
News breaking overnight from Texas. 2 heavily armed men opened fire at an event featuring a cartoon contest.
Both suspects are dead after being shot by police officers.
So my weekend was good until. Well, listen, thank God no innocent people were killed. But who shoots up a cartoon contest? Granted, Ziggy's not what it used to be, but you know, and I think Garfield's been coasting for a long time. Family circus, those aren't even jokes. It's like an actual circus. It seeks to entertain, but it really just fills you with sadness. So what kind of cartoon contest there, as if I don't know, would provoke such a violent reaction?
A group called American Freedom Defense Initiative, notorious for its anti-Islamic views, hosting this award ceremony to give more than $10,000 to the best cartoon depicting the Prophet Muhammad.
Oh, see, that is crazy. $10,000 to a cartoonist? That's like 5 years' salary. That cartoonist could almost consider quitting their 2 other jobs at 2 different cold brew coffee shops. Well, that's that group, AFDI. That's the same group that led protests against the so-called Ground Zero Mosque and has been plastering New York subways with anti-Islamic advertisements. AFDI is a First Amendment group the same way people from Philly are sports fans. Ostensibly, they like sports, but really, they're just looking for an excuse to punch a stranger and pour beer on someone's baby. So, but even so, I can't believe we have to reiterate this. It is not okay to shoot other people because you are offended by what they draw. Even if they drew it to offend you, no shooting of them. Never okay to shoot people. Never, ever okay.
Okay, well, hold on. Wait. John, what if I, really don't like them?
You cannot shoot people.
Okay, yeah, fine.
You cannot shoot people. You cannot shoot people because you don't share their opinions. You cannot shoot people even if they offend you.
What if I, haven't shot anyone in a long time?
No.
All right. God bless you all. I am the Free American. I am Clay Douglas. Make a donation. I hadn't shot nobody.